So one of the ways to make yourself seem more interesting is to all you do is just ask them questions about themselves, because people love to talk about themselves. When people talk about themselves, they'll give off all sorts of clues in the Big Brother house. What sets them off? Who do they want to work with? Why do they want to work with that person? Because I'll tell you one crazy fact. And this is like, the first time I played it, I thought it was weird. And the second time I played it, I'm like, this is normal. The first 3 weeks of living in that house, I'm not lying to you, I was asked 5 questions. In 3 weeks, 24 hours a day around people. Everyone just talks about themselves. And I was fine with that. But like, some people can't handle not talking about themselves. But literally, imagine being in this room and all you can do is talk and no one asks you anything about your life. I mean, it gets kind of lonely, but what are you there for? So one huge tip is, if you've never read that book, read it, because it teaches you a lot of simple things about social dynamics that can allow you to mess with people's heads.
I mean, it's interesting that you acknowledge that, because I remember countless times during the last season where you were almost interviewing some of you're asking Ian to tell you about Pokemon.
Yes.
Or you were asking someone to tell you about their family or their hobbies, or things that I would say it wasn't much of a stretch to say that you might not have had a great deal of interest in, but you were not only allowing them to talk about it, but you were giving them feedback and showing them interest. You were engaging with them.
Yeah.
And I think that part of the reason why you were so successful in that season is because you formed those personal connections. The personal connections, the Memphis thing came up, and I don't want to bring you back to the verge of tears again, but how real are those relationships, and how badly does it sting when people who you have formed relationships with in the game or outside of the game respond negatively towards you as a result of things that have happened in the house?
Well, to talk about like getting people to do things, I kind of tie it back to like coaching football. When I coached high school football, I went in there guns blazing, and the players didn't really respond to me. It wasn't until, there's an old saying, they don't care what you know until they know that you care. So until you showed someone they care about you, they weren't going to do anything for you. Like in football, a player would not run through a 300-pound lineman unless he knew I cared about him. Same thing in Big Brother house. When you talk about those things, you show that you care about them. And that's genuine. Like, that's how I am in my real life. Like, I really sit back and I want to know things about why you're moving to LA and how that is. I'm genuinely interested. But in the Big Brother, that pays dividends because they do those things. So the risk is, like, you do form bonds with people. So like when say in season 14, like Shane and I were pretty close. But did I bat an eyelash when I had to stab him in the back? No. Because why? Here's why. Is because it's a game. And like, if I'm in that house and I don't come home with any money, how do I justify to my wife that I just left her for 3 months? I would never want to leave my wife for 3 months unless there's a purpose. And so the thing that hurts me a little bit is that not everyone sees it as a game. And it's understandable, because you have people in that house that aren't somewhat psychotic, that can remove themselves from like a social situation. Like, I bet some of you might have been a little ticked off at me that I pulled this extra credit stunt. Imagine if that was for $500,000 and you're on your way out. Like, just take that and push that to the next level. That's part of the reason why I did that. I wanted you guys to feel just a little bit of what it felt like. And some people can deal with that. Lucky, I'm fortunate enough where I've never been in that situation in the game where I've had to rectify that. But say like Ian would have stabbed me in the back of the end, I would like to think that I would have shook his hand and said, good game, because when I watch reality TV, that's what I appreciate. I don't appreciate people saying, well, I gave you my word, and so I'm going to get voted out, because like then I never saw the season where Brandon Hance like gave away immunity, because what are you thinking?